Hello and welcome back to Read the World. My name is Derek Main and I review translated literature. The book I'm going to review today, I'll just say out front, was one of my most anticipated titles of 2020. When I first saw that she had a new book that was coming out in English translation and read the description of what the book was about, I was pretty excited. And I'm here to tell you that it lives up to the hype and then some. This is 4x4 by Sara Mesa, translated by Katie Whittemore, and it is from Open Letter. And so, quick shout out, I've got my books, Open Letter t-shirt on. I'm a fanboy for Open Letter. I'm not gonna lie about that. I think the variety of the stuff that they have that comes out is spectacular. You can go back through my reviews and see. I mean, the fact that you've got Death in Spring, Rodrigo Fresson, Private Lives of Trees, one of my favorite books ever. This year, The Teacher blew me away. And these are they're all so different. Like, it has such an interesting aesthetic where it's like, we are just going to pull, the most interesting and sort of diverse set of works around the world and bring them to the English reading world. And anyway, so huge fanboy, not going to apologize for that. I say it because I'm so impressed with 4x4 by Sara Mesa that I actually think it is going to end up being one of sort of the pillars or cornerstones of their catalog. So I think it's that kind of an important work where, 10 years, 15 years from now, when we talk about Open Letter as a press, I do think 4x4 is going to be one of those titles, along with a couple of the others that I mentioned. I mean, we're going to talk about Rota, certainly. I mean, I think that I hope people will talk about Fresson. I'm not sure if that's gathered like mass literary, traction in America. I mean, it did win the BTBA, so maybe it has, and I just don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, I think 4x4 by Sara Mesa is going to be that kind of title. And so I feel obliged to do the damn best I can to tell you why I loved it. But this is a moody, atmospheric, sort of has a cinematic quality book. That makes it tough to talk about because it's a mystery. I feel like I said this on my noirs, and this isn't a noir. I mean, this is more of the gothic mystery, but it can be difficult when the elements of horror, because this is kind of a horror novel, how they are expressed and then how we as readers find out about them is the real joy. It's kind of weird, but it's the fun, in reading this work. The work is also extremely well written. The writing is very interesting. I mean, tight, taut sentences, very direct, no sentimentality with it, no adornment. I'm going to talk about the structure here in a minute, and you'll see there's opportunity here for the writer to take on some of that, and Sara Mesa doesn't. She chooses to take this so seriously that the writing simplicity actually is part of its power. And I really, really liked that. Okay, I probably got off track. I should tell you about the plot. So, Wybrony College. Wybrony College is a walled-in high school, boarding high school, that the rich send their kids as a kind of refuge and escape from a quickly deteriorating outside world. Now, this is set either now or in the near future, And what exactly is deteriorating about the outside world is not ever made clear, but it's sort of irrelevant. We just know it's deteriorating. To say that this is a novel for today's times is one of the biggest cliches that you can run across right now in literary circles. This is a novel for today's times. Like, really. The novel, it is almost doesn't matter what the horror outside of the walls of Winbury College is, nor what the horror inside the walls of the college are. Because the novel is about the power structures that arise in times of chaos, both externally, so outside those walls, but then critically, internally in these places that are supposed to be safe. And these power authoritative structures, they rise up, rules, codes, all that kind of stuff that we have to adapt to new ones. And within that, you have an atmosphere and a situation just rife for abuse and trauma of some kind. What the specifics of that abuse or that trauma are, those details, I mean, it's important while you're reading it, but for the thematic quality of the novel, kind of irrelevant. I mean, this, to me, I kept thinking, while they are walled in this supposedly safe place, I kept thinking about right now, we across the world are being told to quarantine, right? Smartly so, or being told to, stay at home. And within our homes, we develop we have our own power structure, right? So like here, it's me and my wife, 2 kids, dogs, so my wife and I are the authority. And here, we're thankfully and luckily, we live in a happy home. But I was thinking as I was reading this about there are many, many unhappy homes in many unhappy places. And when you wall yourself off from the world, which again is what we are doing right now, I mean, out of necessity, those horrors can fester. I mean, it provides almost like this perfect petri dish to allow pain and trauma inflicted on, I don't want to use the word helpless, but inflicted on those with less power by those with more power. Okay, so we're at Winbury College, and I think I've basically through that little aside, you can understand there's something bad going down. And this story is really about figuring out what that is. And it's going to come out in little bits and pieces and dribbles here and there, and that's again sort of the joy of reading it. And then as the fuller picture kind of expresses itself, and it's never completely full, but as the fuller picture expresses itself, I think there then is some commentary on the ways in which we can respond when we see these sort of injustices. Here again, I said this is a novel of our times. That's another way that it's a novel of our times, right? Because there's 2 philosophies she actually mentions, Sara Mesa, by name towards the end of one of the sections. One of the teachers she mentions as a cynic, practicing cynicism. One of the maids at the college she mentions as practicing stoicism. So these are 2 philosophical responses that you can choose to horrors external, right? And they're both very dangerous. I actually talked recently, I talked about how I thought that we would find in our own time an increase in stoicism as a philosophy, because I felt that privileged people such as myself would take this opportunity to find their own internal happiness in the midst of a storm, which is sort of what stoicism offers. at the expense of trying to make any real change in their lives or question the power and authority structures that exist that they benefit from. Now, this is a little different for this reason. The cynicism, let's start with that. So the teacher that practices cynicism allows you to sort of see it all, and similar to Stoicism, you do get to wash your hands of any action to change anything. But with cynicism, I think that there is the opportunity to at times engage with the horror. Because once you decide cynically that there is nothing that you nor anyone else can do to stop something awful from being perpetrated, if there is some part of that awfulness that you yourself would find some joy in participating in, then I think you can, as a cynic, convince yourself that it would be okay because it's going to happen anyway. So that's sort of the cynicism. It's almost a too cool for school or whatever. But then maybe you're going to dip your toes in that water as well. Well, Stoicism's different, right? Because Stoicism is much more of that, you know what I mean? And you are going to find your own internal happiness. Well, in this case, it's quite a bit different because the Stoicism, she exhibits that as an emotional response, okay, to a specific traumatic incident. So it is not a philosophical choice. And that distinction is very important because the cynicism that one of the teachers exhibits is a philosophical choice. Whereas the Stoicism, again, that's an emotional response. And the thing I'm talking about being wary of in our own society is a philosophical choice, not an emotional response to a traumatic incident. Stoicism is a well understood and I think regarded response in that way. Well, there's a third way to personally deal with these power imbalances that cause trauma once you see them. And we have a student, an ex-teacher, and then a current teacher during this, all three that go that route. And I can't get into what that route is because it's in spoiler territory. But I can say that route, while self-satisfying in the sense that you do get to alleviate your own pain and suffering, it does not demonstrably, or rather, it turns out really at all, alter the system in place to abuse others. So that doesn't work either. So one thing about this book is it is not prescriptive. I mean, it really lays bare what power structures can do, but it offers no hope. It is bleak. Now, that's not to say that Sara Mesa herself, does not think that there is a way out of that sort of cycle of authoritarianism. Perhaps she does, but that's not the purpose of this particular novel. This particular novel is to lay it bare. All right, so structure. I've hinted at it a lot. Structure is very important. The first 80 or so pages are taken from the perspective of the students at this school. And Sara Mesa does a really excellent job of maintaining the same high literary quality that exists throughout her work, while also balancing that with the realism of it coming from younger students. So a pet peeve of mine, just as a reader sometimes, is when writers, even excellent ones, get in the heads of or do first-person accounts with teenagers, because it's like, it just throws you off sometimes. Like, they're just like, they can't do it. Even great writers have trouble getting to that immature emotional state while also like keeping the level of writing so strong. And Sara Mesa does that wonderfully in the first section. And that first section also is going to start to, it obviously hints at the trouble. So we get this creepy atmospheric feeling, but we end it really no more knowledgeable of what's going on from when we started it. Second section is the largest section, so page 87 to about 223, and this book is about 240 pages long. That section is in the form of a diary or a journal of a substitute teacher who has just come on at Winbury College. He's replacing a teacher who has mysteriously left, and it is just his account literally from when he first drives in until however he leaves. And he is pretending to be someone else. That's a very important aspect of it. So he has his own internal secrets that he wants to protect because this job is very valuable to him. But also he is a self-professed wannabe writer. And again here, Sara Mesa could have used that trope to fall into some traps of adding adornment to the writing, right? And adding sort of flourish, which I can tell you, I think at least as a writer is fun to do, but she doesn't do that. It actually reads much more like a true, honest sort of journal accounting, and you imagine that the wannabe writer is doing his writing kind of outside of this work, if that makes sense. Anyway, really effective. I love the voice of that substitute. And he is going to be our guide and sort of detective that is going to, through his arc, really show us the fullness of the horrors that are happening. And then the third and last section, very brief, only about 12 pages, are the papers that were left behind for the teacher that he replaced. And these papers are very poetic. It's it's written really, really unique. It's a really cool writing. But they definitely sort of close some loops for us. And not all of them, because like I said, I mean, the exterior about what's going on outside, like why are things so dire outside these walls, like hinted at, never fully think, you know, because it doesn't matter. Like, okay, there's martial law, or there's this authoritarianism, or this fascist. I mean, at a certain point, they're just names and dates and history, and you understand what the situation is because this is, you know, human nature. God, that sucks, doesn't it? I hope not. I hope it's not. Fuck, but it probably is. All right, anyway. I'm going to end this review, which I hope I've done it justice. I'm going to be straight with you. This is my second time trying to review it. Because I really want to provide something, and I want to say something about this work. And I hope I have, because it means a lot to me. It's something, I immediately went back and read section 1 after I was done, because you wanted to see where those little breadcrumbs and clues were put in. And it was such a rewarding reread, and that was only section 1. This is something I'm going to return to. And I think a lot of people will. I don't think this is just a one read. Like, a lot of people are going to come back to this and find a lot of wisdom, beauty, and horror in this gothic tale. So I've decided to do no context quotes. I'm going to do 4. And I think it fits the moodiness and the mystery of the book to do it in this way. So here we go. Page 37. I follow the fence, watching the woods. I know how to get out. I know where the holes are. Everyone knows about them, I think, but they all keep quiet. Page 83. She makes it clear that an absence is always a response to something, and she makes it especially clear that this is a permanent absence. Page 150. I'm beginning to realize that every day here has an emasculating aftertaste. And page 186, my final one, and then I'm going to sign off for today. I will say that I think, I said I'd give you no context. Okay, really quick context. I think that this brief couple of sentences is my favorite summation of the book. And if you do believe me that this is a book for our times, also an excellent summation of where we find ourselves. We've entered a new age, one in which the lies that used to make sense no longer do, and the truths that once sustain us begin to disguise themselves as lies. From now on, we will be ruled by other codes, other norms, a hostile environment to which we must adapt in order to survive. This was their first audiobook, too, if I haven't mentioned that yet, for Open Letter. I think this would be a really interesting audiobook to read. I can't encourage you enough to grab this. I think it will definitely be on a top 10 list of mine this year. This is a haunting, sadly familiar in some ways book, because we do know the story, right? This might be human nature. Fuck. 4x4 by Sara Mesa, translated by Katie Whittemore from Open Letter Books. Thanks again. Be good to folks.